They might start to seem a little worried. There's no shortage of legal jeopardy right now for the president, for his family, for the people and entities that are important to him. And honestly, I mean, I don't say that lightly. It is hard to know where the limits of legal jeopardy here might be, not just for the president and his family, but for the entities that are closest to him. And I just would single out one line here, because I don't think this has had a lot of attention, but it sort of stuck with me over the weekend. And the more I talk to people about it, the more, especially the more I talk to people sort of in the legal system about it, the more this sticks out for me. There's literally a line in the Michael Cohen plea agreement from last week where federal prosecutors spell out that Michael Cohen pleading guilty in federal court last week means that federal prosecutors agree to not further prosecute him for the crimes that he admitted to in court last week. But prosecutors explicitly spell out in the plea agreement with him that they are reserving the right to cite those same felonies as predicate crimes in case they ever want to bring a RICO case in the future on this matter. RICO, that 18 U.S. Code, Section 1961, right? That's racketeering. That's RICO, as in organized crime. Federal prosecutors are reserving the right to charge something here as an organized criminal entity under the RICO statutes, and that relates to Michael Cohen. What? Right. That alone is probably enough to light a little bit of a fire under anybody who believes they might personally end up in the crosshairs of one or more of these now ongoing investigations. But amid all of these different cases and all of these different potential avenues for legal jeopardy for the president and his family and his business and even his charity, even amid all of that, the Paul Manafort case really does stand out. It really does stand alone. Right? Michael Flynn, President's National Security Advisor, pled guilty. Rick Gates, President's Deputy Campaign Chair, organizer of Trump's inauguration, he's pled guilty. George Papadopoulos, Campaign Foreign Policy Advisor, has pled guilty. Even freaking Alex Vanderswan, random foreign lawyer, pled guilty. Right? Paul Manafort has not pled guilty. He stands alone here, and things are now happening to him fast. Of course, the same day Michael Cohen pled guilty in federal court, almost exactly simultaneously to Michael Cohen standing up and pleading guilty to those 8 felonies, Paul Manafort was convicted of 8 felonies by a jury in the Eastern District of Virginia. The day after tomorrow, Wednesday of this week, the prosecutors who convicted Manafort on those 8 felonies, they're going to have to tell the court whether they are going to bring Manafort back to court to retry him on the 10 felony charges for which the jury was not able to reach a verdict. Remember, it was 8 felonies, conviction, 8 felonies, hung jury. Couldn't come to consensus. The foreperson of the jury went out of his or her way to make it publicly known on the verdict sheet that on those 10 charges where they couldn't come to a verdict, 11 of the 12 jurors wanted to convict Manafort on all of them. Only one holdout for the 10 charges on which they didn't get guilty verdicts. Prosecutors know that, and they have the right to put Paul Manafort on trial again for the 10 charges where they got a mistrial, where they were just one juror away from a conviction. We're going to find out the day after tomorrow whether they are going to try Manafort again on those 10 charges. At the same time...
Well, isn't that special? You know, I remember somebody saying something about some racketeering stuff. Ooh, I wonder who that was.
Treated me too many times before. my hand. Oh, when I'm holding yours in mine and walking in the sand. Oh, baby, you know it's fine.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the hell it is, wherever the hell you are, and welcome back to the Lost-Begotten's living room couch. And now it's a fancy studio. How about that? Really, just an old shitty green blanket just tacked up behind my couch so I can annoy my wife with it. Oh, yes, welcome to the #1 suppressed channel on YouTube. And I just want to remind anyone that might be in our shiny new fake government that if they think that they had some sort of agreement with me as far as just deciding to be able to suppress my channel for illegitimate reasons, you need to go back and look at what I actually said, which was the present administration. Anyways. But, you know, that's just if you don't want to get caught up in the whole racketeering thing. I'm not saying that you'd be... I'm not saying that the United States government would wind up being financially liable for violating the terms of an arrangement I had made with them. Because if they would look at the little agreement there, the compensation I was supposed to receive was was based around the success of this YouTube channel, or my former YouTube channel. I wouldn't be in this fucking position if it wasn't for the bullshit I've had to endure. Where I've tried to make a whole separate YouTube channel just to talk politics, just to see if I could get some sort of legitimate free speech usage out of the monetized channel. But no. It's been quite an interesting little fiasco here, where I've managed to provide information via broad data analysis that has managed to consistently stay 2 years ahead of what people actually figure out. And once again, it was immediately after the so-called election, or the terrorist attack of 11/9, that I said that Donald Trump and his associates would be guilty of racketeering. The investigation would center around it because that's what they were doing. And that seemed pretty far-fetched at the time. And I've pointed out recently that it seemed like people were starting to realize what I had in mind with that. 2 years ago. Just about 2 fucking years ago. Because it is now almost September 2018. And good morning, Carlos. Still says 0 people watching. It never went up to 1. Who knows why that might be. Zero people watching. There we go. So it seems to me either YouTube just has no appreciation for quality content, or the subject matter of my predictions is something that they are particularly interested in suppressing. So, once again, I might remind you, people at YouTube, that I think you're going to wind up being part of this investigation, this racketeering, espionage, and cyber terrorism investigation. And the reason why you haven't heard anything about it is because this is not the type of thing you would hear about it until the very end. This is the type of thing that is being tightly coordinated by an international task force that doesn't fucking answer to any of its targets. So, it's too bad none of you will be able to tell your defense counsel, oh, I wasn't part of it. As you can see, there was this one person who was trying to tell people the truth. And I went behind the scenes and I made sure that they weren't fucking with his channel. What a powerful legal argument that would make. You see, it's interesting. I had a little chat with one of the Rachel Maddow Show producers. And I told him, look, just remember me. When you hear that the investigation is about racketeering, because that's what it's going to wind up being about. I guarantee it. I've been right about this shit for years. And I predicted this whole Russian collusion thing before Donald Trump even became a candidate for president. He just filled a slot, and I'm kind of surprised I didn't see him coming in particular. But I just thought he was such a fucking moron. I really couldn't fucking take him seriously. I overestimated us. It's not that I underestimated the Russians. It's that I'd really just overestimated us. I thought there was more character than what wound up being in the American fucking zombie apocalypse population. I was thinking about that earlier today, of how many people I've seen actually repeat the phrase, Crooked Hillary, as if they didn't understand what a verbal device was, what a rhetorical mechanism for brainwashing, for manipulation. And I would just wonder, how can anybody really fall for that shit? And I guess I never gave my upbringing as a Texan enough credit. I suppose I even underestimated or overestimated the Texans too, because they wound up becoming morons after having taught me to not be a moron. You know, I got a lot of my vigilance from Texans. You know, and it's like, jokingly, yeah, Texas never really wanted to join the Civil War. They were never really part of the South. Okay. And what it all came down to was they were racist for different reasons. They weren't racist because they had cotton fields and they had slaves and needed to pick them, you know. They were racist because, to them, black people looked like some really well done barbecue. And, you know, after the Alamo, they all got fucking hungry and, oh, never mind. Was that a racist joke or a cannibalism joke? I'm not sure. Either way, it was just wrong, I tell you. My wife thought it was funny. Pretty sure I told it better earlier, but I tried. Ugh. I've been having some pretty wild dreams lately. You ever had dreams that were vivid enough in succession? You know, many dreams from the same place, doing different things, but in the same kind of place? I've been having those dreams lately. Starting to get distracting. And I think last night I went to Mama's house. Like she was still alive, like she never died. But I didn't remember here, so I didn't know that she was dead. You know, it was just like she wasn't. She never, you know, she never died. That was fucking weird. Anyway. It's been a long time since I was actually, you know, sleeping with any regularity. Not that I'd really call it regular sleep at this point, but at least I'm getting more of it. Because what can I say? Knowing the crap that I know, that can basically unite everyone around fixing all the woes of society and plagues of the world, etc. And just being digitally suppressed and kept from being able to fucking say anything to the public at large. It's kind of stressful. It's kind of something to lose sleep over. But anyways. I guess some people just don't know when to take me seriously, I suppose, huh? You see, what you do in a racketeering investigation, especially one as complex and involving cyber terrorism and espionage and all kinds of different things like this, is you go after the people that everybody knows about. Okay? You go after the people that are basically just blatant, that the news people are talking about. And what you do is, while you're doing your own investigation, you do a foreground investigation. And this is designed to get patsies to come out of the woodwork. Okay? And this sounds like it's obstruction and just going to derail the investigation. But if you see it coming, what it's going to do, and they saw it coming, so this is what it's been doing, is give them ways to not only trace back the sources of obstruction and then confirm what they've already been investigating. But then they get to learn even more, and they get additional dirt and additional charges on these people by the witness intimidation and attempts to obstruct that they're engaging in during the investigation before any of it can ever go public. So they're just biding up their time, racking up the dirt, racking up the charges. And I've seen every indication that the broad net that I initially thought was going to be cast is starting to show ripples in the water, and the fish are starting to panic. But anyways, as for the people at YouTube, the best thing they could do on an individual technologist level if one wanted to exonerate oneself, well, there's this one YouTube creator who you knew wasn't part of the problem, that you knew could help solve the problem. And deep down you were only playing along so you could help this guy out when the time came. Well, the time is now. Because frankly, I got shit I need to buy. Now. It's just that simple, folks. Now is the time to invest. And I ain't trying to sit around on my hands and watch the last opportunity that can make things a lot easier for everyone pass me by. Hiccups. You still here, Carlos, or did you just stop by to say hello? Because I never saw it even go to 1 on the view. But anyways, we certainly have some interesting yet predictable developments from our very polite and sympathetic friends in Russia. You see, John McCain managed to speak sense to a lot of situations, take the strategically correct position on most issues that weren't directly politically related. And while the Trump, after 2 days of people criticizing him for being ambiguous and not seeming to want to say anything nice about John McCain, finally issued an actual statement. The White House did. The Russians have apparently come out with their own little statement.
John McCain was a thorn in Russia's side throughout his political career. In Russian media, he was portrayed as the ultimate cold warrior and a symbol of Russophobia. Joining now to discuss is CNN national security commentator Mike Rogers. He's a former House Intelligence Committee chairman and the host of CNN's Declassified. Mr. Rogers, always a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. John McCain,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. John McCain is remembered so far many things. His decorated military career, his decades in Congress, his presidential aspirations. What do you think John McCain's legacy will be?
You know, I think he's that guy that did work to reach his hand across the aisle when it wasn't popular. I think that's going to be a big part of it. He's very hawkish on national security. He believed in the importance of U.S. engagement in the world. I think that's going to be really important. You know, he led so many congressional efforts around the world to try to work out problems in real time. Didn't get a lot of credit for a lot of that, but he did a lot of some great work overseas for that. And I think if you look at that body of work, I think that's the story of John McCain. He was for you, and I thought McConnell said it right today. You know, there's no better friend to have in a fight, and no worse enemy when he wanted to clobber you. He surely came at you. As a member of Congress, I've been on both sides of that, but I always respected him, and his temper never. Went longer than 24 hours. I'll tell you that. He'd call you up sometimes after a disagreement when I was chairman and say, we're all right. And he'd hang up the phone. The next day we'd be, right back at something different. And
that's how it's supposed to be. That is how it's supposed to be. You have an argument or whatever. You go have a beer later, or you go out for coffee or whatever, and then it's fine. You don't have to agree. But that's how it's supposed to be. Listen, let's stick to this Russia thing, because there's some pretty disgraceful things that have been said about him in Russia and recently on Russian television, because he was a frequent foe of Russia throughout his career, and the reaction to his death really hasn't been kind. Russia said he called him, quote, the main symbol of Russophobia. The Russian senator said this about him: he is a symbol of the outspoken anti-Russian thinking. In essence, Russia cannot be anything other than hostile. The enemy is dead. May the Lord accept his dark soul and determine its future. Gee whiz. Why was
pretty hard stuff?
It's harsh, but why was he so unpopular, which was a good thing with the Russians?
It was a good thing. I mean, actually, if John McCain were on your show right now, he would take that as a badge of courage.
Exactly.
Because he had the courage to stand up. He was very sober about what the Russians have been doing, not only recently, but over the last 40 years. They can put on a happy face, but they have been pretty ugly actors around the world. And they do it with the levers of power that they have. They don't have an economy. I mean, when's the last time you bought anything that said made in Russia? Not recently. And so what they do is they use their intelligence services, they use cutouts, they do the things like they did to us in 2016. And John McCain understood that force was always and constantly at work to great democracies, including our allies, and was always willing to stand up. So I don't think he would even be bothered by it. I think he's probably got a bit of a smile on his face that the Russians, who he knew and frequently called out for their activities, now think that he's no longer important. But what they don't understand is I do think his legacy of that hawkish work across the aisle, U.S. engagement will transcend John McCain in a way that I think he'd be proud.
He spent 5.5 years in a Vietnamese prison after being shot down from a bombing missions in 1967. And this is what the man running the prison said of McCain's passing. He said, "At the time, I liked him personally for his toughness and strong stance. Later on, when he became a U.S. Senator, he and Senator John Kerry greatly contributed to promote Vietnam-U.S. relations. So I was very fond of him. When I learned about his death early this morning, I felt very sad." I mean, what is it about John McCain that even the man who oversaw his torture at the Hanoi Hilton came to admire him?
Wow.
You know, this is one of those moments, Don, where you say we should not cry that he died, we should smile that he lived. And this is one of those moments. He was able to get through some very harsh treatment, both mentally, emotionally, and take that into his U.S. Senate role, and then reach back and say, "I forgive, let's move on, we can do something better." And that really was that spirit and that legacy of John McCain. He always believed, yep, we're going to fight it out when we have a difference, but at the end of the day, we're going to work for something bigger and something better, because he always put his country first, and he believed that Vietnam, as a friend of the United States, was the better solution for the United States of America, and that international engagement. Think about somebody who could have carried a grudge. You know, unlike what we have seen here in the United States in the last few days. This guy could have carried a grudge. He didn't do it because he put his country before that, and he put the interests not only of the people of Vietnam, who, by the way, he believed he was fighting for, and the interests of the United States. I just think that's the essence of John McCain's effort style and personal ethos that he brought to public office.
So what do you think Trump's going to try to do to get attention during the funeral that he's not invited to? That's kind of funny. Oh, that's just far too interesting.
It happened on this stretch of highway in Fayetteville, Arkansas, back in 1975. A 12-year-old girl brutally attacked by a 41-year-old man. They were reportedly in his pickup truck after midnight and parked in a ravine. That's where she says he beat and raped her. The 6th grader ended up in the emergency room. The young lawyer called on to defend the suspect in the case was none other than Hillary Rodham. Just 27, she had moved to Arkansas to be with her then-boyfriend, Bill Clinton. Hillary Rodham was running the legal clinic at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. The defendant, Thomas Alford Taylor, who denied the charge, had requested a woman lawyer. So the judge appointed the future Mrs. Clinton. It would be her first criminal defense case. Malin Gibson was the prosecutor at the time.
The day after she was appointed, in fact, she called me and wanted to know if I could get her unappointed. She didn't want to represent the rapist.
Despite her objections, Clinton immersed herself in Taylor's defense, as she was legally obligated to do. In this affidavit seeking a psychiatric evaluation of the victim and signed Hillary Rodham, the rookie lawyer painted the victim as emotionally unstable, suggesting she'd brought false accusations like this before, that she fantasized about older men, and that experts say children like the victim tend to exaggerate or romanticize sexual experiences. CNN contributor Josh Rogan interviewed the victim, now in her 50s, back in 2014, nearly 4
And
decades
that's the kind of
after the
cold-hearted
crime.
bitch I want
The
as my
victim said the
president.
allegations in the affidavit
just
are
me.
untrue, that she'd never romanticized sexual experiences or made any false
Didn't want to
accusations
do it.
before.
There's
She had to
never
do it.
been
She
any
fucking did
evidence
it.
presented by anyone to substantiate the allegations that Hillary Clinton made in that affidavit. To the victim, this was an attempt by Hillary Clinton to smear her in order to exonerate her attacker. The victim believes that Hillary Clinton lied in order to win.
Clinton also insisted on getting her own expert opinion on the accused rapist's underwear, after the crime lab had cut out the key part of the sample to test, then lost it. In a bold move for a first-time defender, Clinton brought what was left of the accused rapist's underwear from Arkansas all the way here to Brooklyn, New York, more than 1,200 miles, just so a renowned forensic expert she'd hunted down could look it over. A move considered aggressive even by the prosecutor's standards. Maybe so, but it worked. Clinton's expert cast doubt on what was left of the evidence, saying it hardly showed the defendant's blood or semen. The prosecution's case quickly started to unravel.
We began to scramble and consider possibilities of lesser offenses.
The story was mostly forgotten until in 2014, audio emerged of Clinton talking about the case with an Arkansas journalist back in the 1980s. Listen to her laugh describing the moment she delivered her forensic expert's findings to the prosecutor.
Well, I'm just getting ready to come from New York.
Wait, so was it guilty or?
Those recordings were played for the victim by Josh Rogan during his interview. Her reaction was anger.
When I heard that tape, I was pretty upset. You lied on me, and you're supposed to be for women? You call that for women? What you done to me? And I heard you on tape laughing.
There is another piece of audio that Clinton's critics have pointed to for some time. Clinton on the same tape laughing about her client passing a polygraph.
You took a lot of tests. I passed the polygraph. And she passed. Forever just drug my test. But you know what was sad about it was that the prosecutor had evidence.
But whatever evidence the prosecutor had was trumped by Clinton's defense. In fact, even the prosecutor told us Clinton was doing what any good defense attorney would do.
She was just doing her job. She was going to present the best defense she could, and she was certainly going to require us to prove his guilt.
In a plea deal, she got her client's charges reduced from rape to unlawful fondling of a child. For rape, Thomas Taylor could have gone to prison for life. Instead, he was sentenced to 1 year in the county jail. Even that was reduced 2 months for time served. Clinton was asked about the case weeks after her audio tapes emerged, during this interview with an online parenting network in Britain.
When you're a lawyer, you often don't have the choice as to who you will represent, and by the very nature of criminal law, there will be those who you represent that you don't approve of, but at least in our system, you have an obligation, and once I was appointed, I fulfilled that obligation.
No matter her explanation, the victim sees it.
There's a whole different dynamic to this that nobody's even addressing. You don't just have to fulfill your obligation as a lawyer, okay? You have to fulfill the expectations of the legal community that you surround yourself in. Otherwise, you'll never advance. And, you know, I never painted Hillary Clinton as someone who had a fucking heart of gold. I want someone as my president who's going to be calculating and chameleon-like and do what the fuck they have to do. I just want someone who's loyal to this country and understands the problems that we face as a country and how we need to strategize and understand that addressing our socioeconomic problems is how we address our national security problems, that they need to be done at the same time. I need someone that fucking smart for me to vote for them for president. Okay? I'm not expecting someone whose shit doesn't stink. Now, that being said, Hillary Clinton spent a long time having learned her lesson from that and showing it in her actions with what she's done for women. But, you know. I guess being married to someone who's a paralegal for a defense lawyer and the kind of cases that you can refuse in private practice versus public defender, well, that just fucking says it all right there. But if you want to get a job in a nice fucking law firm that pays a lot of money, when you're in your early years, you need to show ruthlessness and cunning. You know? I don't like it any more than anybody else would. But when it comes to people who do great things, in general, people who wind up gaining great wisdom in their lives, they gotta do some shit they're not proud of to learn the lessons that make them have a rich grasp of the inequity at hand. But yeah, what do I know? I just used to steal anything that didn't fucking bolt it down. But, you know, for Hillary Clinton, that was almost 50 years ago. Just like for me, that was 25, 27 fucking years, you know, almost 30 years ago. I'm not that person anymore. When was the last time you think I fucking snuck out of my house at night to go steal hood ornaments and fucking hubcaps and shit? It's been a long, long time since I even had the slightest urge. Like I might have thought about it while I was still like 13 or 14 and just been like, you know what my old friends used to do? And then would have agreed with everyone else that it was a horrible idea. How's it going, Mr. Conway? Speaking of old friends with horrible ideas. Oh yes, I get the feeling that there's a couple of you guys on here. If we were like 12 years old together, it would have been trouble. Anyways. Sorry, I just started designing something in my head. Been thinking about the whole dredging water relocation pipeline system. I'm trying to figure out the best way to get massive amounts of dirty fucking water into the central desert plains of this country. Because, boy, let me tell you, when you think of the amount of sediment that just, we don't know what the fuck to do with, and the amount of dirty fucking water, there was just a way to move it. Over there where it's fucking dry as shit. And it doesn't even have to, retain the sediment so much as the organic matter contained within the sediment. So you could kind of have it in like a fermenting pool and release it into the terraces from there. Dingo. But I'm just thinking, the best filter, right, is sand. You got a bunch of dirty fucking water, you got a bunch of dry fucking sand. Gotta be a way, Just dig a hole in the middle of the sand, let the water run through the sand, let it flow back into the river. And just repeat this every 100 miles, have each system stretching about, 300 to 500 miles away from the Mississippi. It would cost a lot of money, but it would create a hell of a lot of jobs, near term and long term. And it would increase the food production capacity of this country. While also cleaning up the fucking Gulf of Mexico. And I suppose I should mention the idea to my Australian friends, because it seems like something they might be interested in as well. And it's basically trying to determine where elevation can help compensate for the problem of weather patterns. So your weather pattern might not bring the rain necessarily into the excuse me. Your weather pattern might not necessarily bring the rain into the higher places, making this something that's conducive all the time. But there's a lot of low-lying places that remain dry just because of weather pattern, not because they're elevated. So if you have any place where there's a consistent weather pattern causing flooding that is as close as possible, then you have the price factors, how far that distance is. Because all you need is a place with the same elevation as a floodplain that doesn't get the same weather pattern. And then when the floodplain floods, that excess water can just blubble up. And next thing you know, you've positively terraformed the planet, Essentially what it winds up doing is undoing the damage that levees do. Because I'm telling you, without levees, floods used to be, pretty wide-reaching things. But now we need to recognize how much of our civilization is built on floodplains, and we need to take these places that were overcropped and overfarmed and overherded, that are all dried out now. We take those places further away and cause them to be the floodplain now. Even if you got to dig some big fucking holes to do it in some areas. Once they find the places where it'll work easily, and then they see how well it works, then you'll see, like, just digging of fucking reservoirs and just, the whole world will be Dutch, basically. I tell you what the fuck happened to America? I'm just thinking, like, Dutch. Yeah, like the people that are proud of, like, the shit that they can do. Like, here's what we've done. I'm thinking, wait, the Australian, there are a lot of Dutch people there. That's not the reason why they're like, we're Australian, here, look what we've done, because we're fucking Australian, and this is how we do shit. We get shit done, because we're Australian. It's the Australian way, It's a little bit of the Dutch influence, but it's a lot to do with them, actually wanting to compete with China instead of complaining about them. Because the Chinese, this is how we do shit. Look how fucking well we do it. Look how much of it we can do because we're Chinese. And what's America anymore? Don't piss us off because we're American. Like, what? What's even the point of fucking America anymore? We need to get that back. We need to actually. Okay, we're Americans. We used to do stuff, and we need to remember how to do it, and remember why we did it. Because otherwise, we're not really fucking Americans anymore, are we? Hey, we're Americans. We know how to build big fucking things that hold lots of fucking people, lots of food, and lots of bombs. And by the way, don't fuck with us, Like, we're just down to the, don't fuck with us. That's all we got. Why? Because we used to know how to do stuff. Oh. The viewership of my channel is a direct reflection on the inherent weakness of this country. You want to go up against the devil, but you don't want my help, huh? Good luck with that. Anyways, you know, I'm trying to empathize with this person, with the Hillary Clinton case. 12 years old. But I keep hearing the way she sounds, you know? Like she wouldn't otherwise really still be so upset after all this time if she wasn't otherwise a fucking anti-Hillary Republican of typical sort. You know? You can fucking hear that. And, let's just say who the fuck lets their 12-year-old daughter go fucking off with strange men and shit? Where were her parents? Yes, I'm pulling that one. Because as an over fucking protective parent, I get to. After all these years, she's mad at the fucking defense counsel? You know, when I look back on when I was what I now consider to be a fucking appalling person, I don't think if I got caught and like went to jail or something, I'd have been mad at the prosecutor. And in retrospect, you know, I'm not mad at the people who were with me out there. I'm not mad at society or whatever, you know. I understand that I was a little fuck with no parental supervision, getting into all kinds of trouble. And my sisters were little fucks getting into all kinds of trouble. Which, let me just say, I'm pretty sure included plenty of grown-ass men before they were of age. It's because my fucking parents were MIA. Where were my fucking parents, you know? I was getting into all that shit because my fucking parents didn't give a shit. My sisters were getting into all that shit. I mean, anything that you wouldn't want your fucking teenage daughter doing, my sisters were doing. Anything you didn't want your teenage son doing, I was pretty much doing. And even as a kid, I knew I wouldn't be doing this shit if I had parents who were worth the fuck. I wouldn't be doing this shit if my mommy and daddy actually act like they cared about me enough to wish I wasn't out here doing this stuff. And now, for that reason, anybody who was involved with that shit with me, whether they were older or the same age as me, whether they knew better or whatever, I don't blame them for the shit that I was getting myself into, no matter how wrong it went. And I wouldn't expect if, you know, say some older guy beat the shit out of me or something. Right? When I was 11 years old, some fucking grown-ass man just beat my ass. I wouldn't expect the legal system in general to have much respect for me, because what the fuck was I doing out there that late at night at that age to begin with? You know? And frankly, we're not going to hear from Hillary Clinton just what kind of judgment she had made on her character, because fucking Hillary Clinton's too polite now. But one might also infer from, you know, that cold-hearted shit that she was saying, and yeah, it was some cold-hearted shit, that we weren't just dealing with your average little innocent, naive fucking 12-year-old. What nobody I'd let my girls hang out with, that's for damn sure. Because they're home by 7, you know, in bed by fucking 8, asleep by 9 o'clock. I don't know, am I tripping? Am I seeing what I want to see? What do y'all think? It's like, it's a long time ago, and I don't really see it as relevant. But from the way that girl talks now, and just from the situation and the attitude Hillary seemed to be having, I wouldn't think it was Little Miss Sweet Innocent. You know, granted, she had no choice, right? But that doesn't necessarily excuse her thinking the fucking guy, her defendant, was guilty and being able to laugh about it. I don't think she would have been able to laugh about it unless we were dealing with, you know, one of the 12-year-old girls that I was around when I was 12 years old. Not nice girls. No offense if any... Wait. I still have friends from back then. Anyway. Yeah, see, in New Orleans, where I moved when I was 12, we had this thing called the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And the older guys who went there seemed to think it was like Jailbait or Us or something, you know. And that's who I had to compete with. I was just happy my voice had fucking gotten low, you know, like I wouldn't creaking and cracking anymore, you know. And I thought, look at all these hot girls. And they're like, look at all these older guys with cars and money. And I'm like, shit. By the time I got to be an older guy with a car, I was living in it. Not that I would have gone fucking... Those people, in retrospect, I didn't realize those people were fucking sick, dude. How the fuck grown-ass men go... okay. But then, that's what them nasty little girls wanted. And that's why parents should keep their fucking kids, especially their daughters, on a fucking close leash, especially nowadays. Fuck, nowadays it's not, you're not worried about them going and try to find older men to buy them drinks and shit, which used to be back in the 90s all the way to the 70s and maybe even before that. Now you're just worried about them getting kidnapped and fucking... Who knows? You know? Oh, here comes the manhunt in the woods. Oh, here comes the seller, you know, like... Some sick shit going on nowadays. That's why, like, a lot of parents are sitting there worried about sending their kids off to college. I'm like, I'm going to try to start a business for y'all to take over so y'all can just, like, stay right here in town. One of them said she wanted to get into politics. Okay. I can train you on that. Alright. I'm going to start out by making you a lawyer. In this day and age, you need to be a lawyer to be a politician, just to avoid being in legal jeopardy all the goddamn time. And I think, and I've been thinking this for a long time, and I'm glad to see the DNC has issued strategies that indicate they agree with me. We need more centrist and, like, fair-minded, not, like, grandstanding prosecutors. Especially women. Female prosecutors. But anyways, you find yourself a little small town to live in, raise some kids right, let them be doctors and lawyers and such. Don't let them be cowboys or chickmunks for that matter. There's not a whole lot of people running for every different office, you know. And usually in small towns, especially in America, it's the places where it's just the one person on the ballot, it's just a Republican. And you know, back in the 60s and 70s, good luck running as a prosecutor if you're a female. You know what I mean? And as sad to say it, and y'all know that it's one of my pet peeve issues that I'm trying to, that if I ever had any influence about, I would make sure action was taken on. Local jurisdictions don't adequately prosecute men in general. And the further back historically you go, the more it's ran by men in general, the more this problem is pervasive. And you got to think about that. When Hillary Clinton was trying to work her way up in the system, she had to act like she was willing to play ball. So, you know, she didn't have the wisdom to be like, where were her parents? The way I would have been. So in her reaching for a character, reaching for, you know, pieces to put the bit together, she forgot that 12 years old is still 12 fucking years old. Anyway. Tell you what, thinking about New Orleans back in the day. brings up plenty of issues. I just want to move on from this subject. But there was a guy who people just called Chester Child Molester at the Rocky Horror Picture Show in New Orleans. And I remember meeting this guy and this is like a thing. And everybody's okay with that. Oh, it's okay, so he's 20 and he likes to date 12-year-olds. That's cute. I'm 13. I'd like to date some fucking 12-year-olds. So it wasn't just icky, but it was unfair competition. Damn it, that's all I'm saying. And now as a parent, I look back, I'm like, where the fuck were these girls' parents? Why did they let them go to this fucking place? You know, did they not go and inspect it or ask somebody? Now, where the fuck were my parents? Oh, they're probably at the same bar. New Orleans. In the late 90s. Where nobody gave a fuck because your work computer was going to crash on Y2K anyways. You know? Oh. Speaking of work computers, you know another reason why I know there's a hold back investigation going on here. Is because they've already got a hold of the work computers. And none of the indictments that have been mentioned really go into any of that yet. But it's very interesting, that little thing about the RICO Act. RICO Act 1961, which is different from the 1972. See, just like Tony said the other day, Trump's been acting like a fucking mob boss. And now they'd notice this one little interesting tidbit, and it's all becoming to make sense. This one little bit of Ferengi fine print. These pleas and immunity deals may not interfere with any future blah 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 charges, investigation, or whatever it says. Regarding the 1961 RICO Act. And that has to do, dearies, with organized crime. And when you're investigating organized crime, like I said, you go after the public people first. You go after the people in the news first. You go after the people that the newsies know about first. And you get the Don to feel comfortable. And just when he's like, forget about it, then you make your move. That was all just so I could go forget about it. I don't know. The whole point of that little spiel. Anyways. So, how was the Pope's visit? Speaking of Dons. I'm Don Popey. Forget about it. Fuck is a pope anyway? Sorry. I'm in the Pepe. I'm in the Pope. Just fascinates me. I'm the Pope. You know what? I'm the fucking Pope. Carlos, you gonna be the Pope too? You can be the Pope. Conway? Nah, not you. You're not Pope material. Oh, but crooked Hillary. Maybe she should be Pope. And then all the priests can go work at the pizza parlor. Oh yeah, so my priests work at a pizza parlor. Forget about it. You know, it makes me wonder, did Trump have some kind of a deal with a pizza place in Trump Tower that was gonna, like, I don't know, use children as toppings or something? And it fell through, and then Trump got angry at it, and, oh, you've been colluding with the Clintons to, I don't know. How about that? Oh, I got cut off. New rule, I'll repeat myself. Never trust anybody who wants to sit on and around a bunch of gold. Whether they're Trumps or Catholics or the fucking Russians or Nope. Fuck. You know, I think we should all learn the healthy interpretation of this, that these people are sociopaths. Okay? Especially if they think that God wants them to do this. Now, all I can say as far as, what's the new guy's name? John Paul Benedict. What's the fucking new guy's name? Humperdinck? No. What's the new fucking Pope? Francis. Oh, Jesus. Sorry, I just watched Stripes the other day. Francis, yeah. Lead, follow, or get out of the way, motherfucker. The title of Pope means nothing to me. Nothing. To me, it's just an ill-conceived plot of man to usurp the power of God. Now, blessed is any institution who tries to pull together resources to help the poor and the sick, as many Catholics do. But if someone wants to even allow themselves to be called Pope and wants to gain my approval, in a situation like this, they need to either speak out and shame those in the past who have covered up these things, or they need to resign. And say exactly why they're resigning, not just resign in silence the way Benedict did. Because it seems to me, you know, I haven't looked at too much of this, but Benedict's the little culminating point of all the recent cover-ups, whereas a lot of this stuff goes back to people who are dead and in fucking nursing homes now. But, you know, I always thought it was cute and kind of promising that Francis was trying to humilify the status of the papacy. You know, downsizing this and that. But you know, on the one hand, you have the Trumpist and the Satanist and these fucking people willing to intimidate anyone. But on the other hand, the same way Trump isn't willing to try to intimidate the Russians, the Pope isn't willing to try to intimidate his own fucking priests. The proper response to this would be fury. And not just anger at the embarrassment. You know, anger at the fucking cover-up. Yeah, now's the time for unequivocal statements. That's all I'm saying. But it won't happen. Because how the fuck is anybody going to see the righteous path when they're surrounded by gold-leafed this and that? You know? Fuck. You know, you got one group of people say, we're the first church because of Peter, and the other group of people say, we're the first church because of Paul. And none of them remembers, hey, both of you motherfuckers didn't come to save the real first church that was founded by the children of Jesus. The whole of the southern lands had fallen, and people just wanted to pretend like it never existed. And that's where your church comes from. Never Never Land. A happy thought. It's fucking Peter Panism. It's not Christianity. It's Catholicism. What the fuck does that even mean? To Caith. Cathartic. Cathode. To numb your mind. You won't find me defending what they are, only what they could be. But they're just not that yet. Anyways. Oh, remote's dead. So, one headline says, girl accused of pushing friend off bridge speaks out. And then the caption on the actual screen says, girl who pushed friend from bridge speaks out. Is she accused or did she do it? Is she accused or did she do it? You know, like you see people like shoot someone and like running from the cops on the fucking camera and they're still a suspect. But you can't decide on whether or not this girl is accused or whether she... the suspect is firing at police. No, he's a fucking criminal. Okay. Now that girl, she may or may not have pushed her friend off a fucking bridge. And more than likely, one of their boyfriends could probably answer that question. Just saying. So anyways, it looks like the upcoming Manafort indictments are going to be even more interesting, as they are concerning things like Russian oligarchs and whatnot. And even a lot of emails that are in Cyrillic, apparently. You know, one of the reasons why I was sending out the USB drive of compilation of evidence that I had gathered was to test and see basically the competence level of the surface investigations that were going on, but also to determine whether or not they already had it. So I would have figured if they would have already had it, I wouldn't see much reaction from it. Either that, or most of our government is in the pocket of Google, and that doesn't seem like the case. But I suppose we'll find out, because it seems like the investigation will probably wrap up shortly after this next Manafort trial, because of the nature of the trial and how it's going to reveal things that are going to make people squirm, and it'll be the last chance to gather information. And there's not going to be any avoiding it. It's not as though me saying anything is going to make people make sure that they're quiet. Because there's going to be shit that's going to come out that's going to make them have to act and have to communicate. Nothing I can say or do is going to change that. So many dragonflies. That's cute. See, now there's just a random old guy I'm subscribed to, just because he's a nice old guy. And he don't talk much about anything. Me and him get about the same amount of views. You know, I'm happy for him. I wish he got more views, but I know I've earned more views than I get. I think he would agree that I shouldn't be getting the same kind of views that he does. Anyway, is anybody still watching? What's on y'all's minds? What you want me to talk about? Because otherwise I might just wrap this one up early. I got some kind of fun little conspiracy theories written down. Conway's still here. Sweet. Congratulations. That's beautiful, dude. Of lawsuits, because that would mean that all the workers who were replaced by machinery were basically replaced by illegal, underpaid workers. So then all the productivity that those employers gain from hiring these machines without paying them, undocumented illegal machinery workers, is actually money that belongs to the children of the workers who lost out on those jobs. But you know, it should be anyways, but this is just a funny way of thinking about it. And probably a good reason why they'll never allow artificial intelligence to become legally sentient. Then humans could sue companies for unfair workers' rights. Just a fun thought. It'd make a fun movie. Now, here's a fun thought that might actually have a little more relevance. And I haven't looked at the history of this, but I probably should, if I can get motivated enough to like type the words in a Google search or something like that. Oh God, that's so much effort. Pennsylvania. No, not fucking wrong thing. Pennsylvania, like the state. Is it so named because it's a penitentiary for Slavic people? You know? I mean, they say Australia and New Zealand were prison colonies. When they finally started dumping people here, was it fucking prison colony type shit? And was it the the Russians, who used what is now known as Pennsylvania as a penal colony, you know? Pennsylvania. It's like either that or it's like Transylvania. Instead of transmissions, they make ballpoint pen. Wait, never mind. What do you think? Any connection? I mean, I've heard that different states in this country started out as penal colonies. I just never heard specifically about Pennsylvania. At least not in this lifetime. The fact that I may have heard it in my previous lifetime gives me all the information I need to know, really. They would have basically had to have started peace negotiations in the 1500s, or at least have some sort of plot to set themselves up for a peace negotiation that would cover up the escapist colonies in the Americas. But it's certainly, you know, if you're on the one hand running from a conquering superpower-like nation, and you go and set up secret colonization deep within a continent that nobody's colonized before, and then eventually, as your enemy conquers you, they wind up colonizing the outer perimeter or different areas of the same continent, and then use that continent as a slave colony. It sets up sort of the ideal scenario for a resistance type situation to form in the Americas, leading to the establishment of what we now know as America. That's something interesting to think about. So you could have had pre-1492 settlement, and then, you know, the earliest expeditions out here, a lot of expeditionary settlement was done by just saying, here, if you want to go and be free and not be in prison anymore, you can come and help us clear this land on this fucking island, you know. And then for some reason we called one of those places Pennsylvania. Penn for Sylvanians. Penitentiary. Anyway. Camaro ends up on a pole after brake checking. Yeah, that's a great video. There's a person on this street here that I think is going to wind up suffering a similar fate eventually. Not necessarily one so spectacular, but similar. Anyways. Chappie. You know, I don't know what Chappie is, brother. You say Chappie, and all I can think of is the Gikong guy that Rukia uses. You know, the bunny has Chappie. Yeah. Chappie the bunny. Because I'm just that percentage of a moron. That's how I do. You know, excuse me, an interesting thing about, you know, just in general, things that I point out and talk about and discuss at length, that no one else seems to realize that talking about these things will actually fix the problems with society and lead us to understanding ourselves as a people and shit like that. The other day I was talking about that little Republican religious type website that had the big spiel about Leninism and Stalinism and Marxist socialists in China, and just didn't mention the word Russia one fucking time. Clearly far right, far conservative, and I didn't think about it at the time, but it reminds me of just the other day when there was this whole big thing about fascism on Some More News. You know, the cracked guy? I like these guys. They seem like fucking perfectly smart people. I like their senses of humor. But apparently the aversion to God that they have has somehow distorted their ability to comprehend or convey truth. Because they, like the repulsive fucking hypocrites who claim to be Christian, they've managed to go through a whole thing on fascism and even mentioning like communism and things like that, but didn't mention Russia. All about Hitler, not about Stalin. Really? Nothing. Because they're socialists, and they wouldn't want you to know things like socialism is just a way to cow people so that a fucking mafia elite can take over. Because that's what it always winds up in. And just in case you didn't hear my previous flawlessly logical explanation of why this is always the case, I'll go ahead and try to repeat a small version of it. When you have a socialist economy, it inevitably becomes a command economy, because socialism is a controlled market. And the more you try to control a market, the more you wind up having a black market emerge. From that black market emerges an illegitimate power structure, which eventually seizes absolute power. And then you have a command economy and a fascist state, still posing as a socialist state. And that's all you Bernie babies could ever fucking hope for. Because it's all you could ever accomplish. You see, capitalism limits power by diversifying power. The problem with American capitalism is the supercorporation. The merger that becomes more powerful than the state government. You know? More powerful than the federal government. Which means that that company becomes more powerful than the people that they serve, and that shouldn't be. Corporations need to be operated on the recognition that they are not feudal lords, that they in fact exist and have wealth because of the people that they serve. Because they're the ones that buy their fucking products. Except for Facebook. They think of us as just commodities to be fucking bartered with. But that's got nothing to do with their Russian investment, Russian and Chinese constant cooperation, or the fact that they happen to embed themselves with the Trump campaign and not the Hillary campaign. Nothing to do with that. Those facts are all individual facts, and they exist in completely separate universes. So no matter how logically they seem to fit together, they just must not. '90s kids will find it funny. You know, should have said '90s babies. It's like, I didn't find half that shit funny. Or a quarter of that shit funny, because we only watched half that shit. I'm like, I've had enough of that. You know what I find funny is how many of these 10 amazing things or top amazing or most ancient things and like all these different fucking YouTube channels that have come out of the woodwork, basically. Over the history of YouTube. Just out of the woodwork YouTube channels, you know? Not like anybody, a person tube, you know? Like YouTube, broadcast yourself, YouTube. Place where you can go to actually see real people broadcasting stuff. Or these interesting little people that just provide these compilations of things, and they just happen to have production software and shit like that. Most of them are either in Canada or Russia. Why is that? Why is YouTube an American company suppressing basically American broadcast for a preference of Canadian, not individuals, but either Canadian or Russian, just abstract presences that produce, you know, meaningless compilation contents, or individuals who have political agendas that affect United States policy in some either overt or subtle way. And maybe Philip DeFranco, also from Canada, is an exception. At least he's an actual YouTuber. Because like he's a the tubes, right? But even he kind of makes me sick because he's always like, we need to talk about this. And like, no, we don't. At least he has, since the fuckery, actually manned up a little bit and is making his very large subscription base of viewers stay on top of basic facts about the Trump-Russia shit and the fuckery that's going on. So I salute you, Mr. DeFranco. But other than that, most people that talk politics want to talk about it to talk about how dumb the entire other side is. And a lot of them fucking people are from Canada. And we have, historical and intelligence information that points to the idea of Canada being used as a place where Russian intelligence operatives and their families can go to be Americanized in order to do things here, to affect policy here. But I think the biggest thing we can wisen up to as far as what the internet talks about and what the news talks about is how these seemingly innocuous people teaching about everything from science to history, and many of them covering news and conspiracy, amount to a psychological warfare campaign that goes a hell of a lot further and deeper than the memes that you saw on Facebook. There is an intense amount of background information and background propaganda, or propaganda, whichever you prefer, that leads up to the profound effectiveness of those Facebook memes. And all I gotta say to Google and to those who I know are investigating very serious charges for some significant portions of Google staff is that Google does not have the right to pretend to be Switzerland. Especially when it's acting more like Belgium. Oh look, a bunch of German soldiers. We should probably say something. Let's not, and say we did. Google's like, hey, look, a bunch of Russians going after American citizens. We should probably say something. Let's figure out how to get paid on this instead. Yeah, they're in a lot more trouble here. That's why it's being kept so quiet. Racketeering, 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 racketeering charges. Racketeering, Good job. Racketeering, racketeering, racketeering charges. For when you intimidate people because you suck. Racketeering, racketeering. Hey, General. Those are some lovely tanks you have there. I would hate to see anything bad should happen to them. That's good. I really hope that there are, like, some, veteran fucking IT people out there who understand this situation, who have been, like, of more assistance to your governments in Europe than they have been to ours, because our government just doesn't seem to want to hear it. And one of the most informed fucking people who seem to have the best advice and was asking the best questions, indicating the best understanding of the situation, got fucking me too. I guess that he's just a comedian line wasn't enough cover. Anyways. But like I said, I can do a little racketeering of my own. Do a little intimidation of my own. Do a little bit of extortion of my own. Although, actually, it's just the typical flawless logic that I do all the time. It's just analysis, because I don't have any effect over these things to begin with. If Google, if YouTube especially, if YouTube in particular, wanted to have an alibi, wanted to have a cover story, wanted to have evidence, wanted to have evidence that they could point to that said, we let free voices speak, and we realized the Russians were silencing some important perspectives, and we made sure that they were heard, and therefore we were sticking up for American values. Well, limiting the number of people who get Ukrainian news, that's one thing. but I'm born and raised in America. Speaking an American point of view, I'm a genuine fucking American crazy person putting on a show for all of you. And the reason I make these videos is because agree with me or disagree with me, conversations about me would be productive. And the fact of the matter is, the topics I've covered and the things I've, been the first to report on, or been the first to reveal, or been the first to theorize, would have been a whole lot of help to American society so far. And YouTube could just say that they recognized that. And that's why they decided to make sure that this channel got promoted and that more people saw it. And tried to find more channels like it that promoted centrist, unifying points of view in an entertaining way that also addressed other popular YouTube topics like conspiracy theories and cars and fish tanks and video games and shit like that. But, just keep suppressing my channel and have fun behind bars, you dumb fucks. That's certainly the more likely scenario I see unfolding. I just figured I'd convey that piece of flawless logic in case anybody wanted to wake up to it. Anyways. Yeah, I just hope agencies like Interpol and the CIA and, others are regularly refreshing their perspective. Not relying on industry insiders exclusively or interrogated double agents exclusively, because you can be led by a bunch of people who've pretended to flip for years down exactly where your enemy wants to have you believe in, And I just worry about the blinders that a lot of these people wind up putting on. That's all. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and call it a broadcast, folks. Hope y'all enjoyed the discussion here. If you're watching this in the future, we'd like to have you in the chats and adding your point of view, or your point of view, whichever you prefer. I don't really know how to point of view. I suppose that would involve, pressing your brain until the idea came out. But, eventually you'd get a nosebleed. Nobody wants that, so. Anyways. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez and Mr. Conway, for hanging out in the chats, as always. And don't forget to click the like button and make sure you're subscribed and you got the dingy bell for the notification and stuff. And hopefully soon I actually will get the freaking shit together required to get on to Final Fantasy IX. Because it's a cool story, it's worth getting into, and I enjoy the gameplay on that one, so it'll be fun for me too. And that'll be on Easy Reefers, and I'll probably still be doing these broadcasts in addition to it, so like I said, I want to make sure I have the time to do it. Anyways. Now I'm gonna sneeze right before I end the broadcast. Okay. Thank you. Excuse me. Y'all have a good one. Peace.
my hand. Oh, when I'm holding yours in mine and walking in the sand. Oh, baby, you know it's fine. But now you done and piss me off. You ain't done something you shouldn't have done. And baby, I'm mad. I'm going on. Oh, I'm going on.